Clark Gable truly hated him more than anyone. Behind the charm, the smile, and the title of the King of Hollywood, there was a storm he never calmed. Most people saw Gable as friendly and strong, but few knew about the private grudge he held deep in his heart. It was not loud, and it was not public, but it was real. He never forgot the looks, the words, the silence between them, and when he spoke about it, even years later, the anger was still fresh. This was not just competition. This was something more personal. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Clark Gable was born as William Clark Gable on February 1, 1901, in a small town called Cadiz, Ohio. His mother, Adeline, died when he was just 10 months old. This tragedy left a deep hole in his life from an early age. His father, William Henry Gable, was a tough oil well driller who raised Clark with toughness and strict discipline. Later, when his father remarried, his stepmother took over raising him, and it was she who introduced Clark to reading, manners, and culture. She even encouraged his interest in the arts, especially dramatic plays. They did not have much. Life was simple and often hard. Gable wore hand-me-down clothes, worked odd jobs, and watched men labor in the oil fields. He grew up in a rough environment where masculinity was defined by strength, silence, and survival. That shaped him into the man the world would later see on screen: quiet, confident, and unshakable. Despite the tough surroundings, by the time he was a teenager, Clark was inspired by Shakespeare and stage actors. At first, he was shy about acting, even embarrassed, but something inside him wanted more than just a life of labor. At age 17, after dropping out of high school, he decided to chase something bigger. He began traveling with small theater companies, starting from the bottom, moving props, cleaning floors, memorizing lines backstage. The strong work ethic built during these early years never left him. Neither did the pain of growing up without a mother or the pressure of being the man of the house too soon. These quiet wounds lived deep inside him, giving his eyes a weight, something that audiences would later connect with, even if they did not know why. Before Clark Gable lit up the silver screen, he lived a life far removed from glamour. After leaving school, he worked on farms, in tire factories, and even as a traveling salesman. He took jobs wherever he could find them, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Money was tight and survival came first. But deep inside, a quiet fire kept burning. He knew he was meant for more. His real journey began when he joined a small theater troupe. It was not acting. At first, he hauled sets, sewed costumes, ran lights. He watched from the shadows as actors performed on stage. Slowly, he started memorizing roles, rehearsing in secret, almost afraid to admit his dream. He had big ears, awkward teeth, and a strange voice. People said he'd never make it, but he did not quit. He trained day and night. He worked on his speech, polished his posture, studied actors who came before him. His dedication caught the attention of Josephine Dillon, an acting coach 17 years older than him who saw something raw and powerful in Gable. She did not just teach him acting, she taught him how to be a leading man. She paid to fix his teeth, trained his voice, and helped him build confidence. Eventually, they married. With her support, Gable began finding small roles in theater. He stood out, not because of perfect looks, but because of something deeper: presence. People noticed his stillness, his intensity, the quiet storm behind his eyes. It was the same quiet he carried since childhood. Before he was famous, Clark Gable had already learned how to fight, how to suffer, and how to survive. Hollywood would not give him anything. He would have to take it, one scene at a time. Clark Gable did not walk into Hollywood like a star. He crept in through the back door, quietly, almost like a shadow waiting for the light. With the help of Josephine Dillon, who coached him every day, he finally landed small, uncredited parts in silent films in the early 1920s. They were blink-and-you-miss-it roles, but they were steps forward. At first, producers did not know what to do with him. He was not the traditional pretty face. He had a rough edge, a heavyweight jaw, and a man's voice. Deep, grounded, confident. There was something real about him. Still, many casting directors thought his ears were too big, his look too unusual. But Gable did not care. He just kept showing up, auditioning, watching, learning. His breakthrough began when he moved to Broadway and earned praise for his work on stage. Eventually, MGM took notice of the man who could command a room without saying a word. In 1931, the tide turned. Gable was cast in The Painted Desert, and suddenly, audiences cared. He was not a one-scene background actor anymore. He was the guy who walked in, said one line, and stole the show. MGM knew they had found something special. The studio signed him, dressed him up, polished his image and threw him into tougher, louder roles opposite strong female leads. Every film made him stronger, and soon he was not just in movies, he was running them. In 1932, his role in Red Dust cemented his status. Women loved him, men respected him, and directors trusted him. Clark Gable Hollywood rise was not luck. It was sweat, pain, patience, and the belief that even a kid from Ohio could stand beside giants and eventually become one. By the early 1930s, Clark Gable was not just a rising actor. He was turning into a force. The moment he showed up on screen, something shifted. He was not fancy. He was not polished like the others. But he had something words could not describe. A presence, a slow-burning power, and Hollywood took notice. His 1934 performance in It Happened One Night was the turning point. He played a wisecracking, down-on-his-luck reporter opposite Claudette Colbert. It was a simple comedy, but it revealed something deeper. Gable had timing, charm, and vulnerability. Audiences were stunned. That role won him his only Academy Award and launched him into full superstardom. After that, Clark Gable became the studio golden weapon. Year after year, hit after hit. Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935. San Francisco, 1936. Test Pilot, 1938. But nothing came close to what would come next. In 1939, he took on the role of a lifetime, Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. At first, he was hesitant. He did not think he could do justice to such an iconic part. But the public demanded him. And once the film released, it was history in the making. Gable Rhett was not just a character, it became legend. Millions flooded theaters, women swooned over his voice, men admired his cool confidence. He was not playing Rhett. He was Rhett. That role became the symbol of Gable's career. Smooth, masculine, dependable, but not afraid to break. By the 1940s, he had earned his nickname, the King of Hollywood. And he carried it well, not with arrogance, but with quiet control. Even at the top, Gable stayed grounded. But beneath it all, behind the charm and the tailored tuxedos, lay a man who never forgot where he came from, or who tried to challenge his throne. Behind the powerful screen persona, Clark Gable's personal life was full of love, loss, and quiet heartbreak. He married 5 times, but it was only once that he truly gave his heart away. His earlier marriages were built on convenience or mentorship. His first wife, Josephine Dillon, was his acting coach and helped shape him into a leading man. She believed in him before the world even knew his name, but their relationship, more professional than passionate, ended as Gable's fame began to rise. After that, he married Texas socialite Rhea Langham. Though the marriage gave him status and stability, it was never built on deep love. As Gable became more successful, their lives began to pull apart. Then, in 1936, he met Carole Lombard, and everything changed. Carole was different, funny, bold, and quick-witted. She did not care about Hollywood games. She teased Gable, challenged him, made him laugh. Their chemistry was instant and electric. They married in 1939 and moved to a quiet ranch away from the spotlight. For once, Gable found peace. Friends said he smiled more with Carole than at any other time in his life. But happiness would not last. In 1942, during a World War II fundraising tour, Lombard plane crashed. She died instantly. Gable was shattered. He joined the war effort days later, heartbroken and lost. He spoke very little during those months. Many say he never truly recovered. Though he would marry again, 3 more times, it was Carole who remained the great love of his life. Her photo stayed on his nightstand until the day he died. Clark Gable might have been the king on screen, but in love, he was just a man trying to find light in the shadows of fame and hold on to it before it disappeared. Spencer Tracy entered Gable world not with noise, but with a calm that made people lean in. At MGM, he was the actor directors whispered about, the one who could do more with a glance than most could do with a speech. Critics called him an actor's actor, a craftsman, a man of truth and stillness. Gable was different. He was thunder and light, the box office king who carried scenes with presence, timing, and that famous half smile. When these two currents met on the same lot, the air changed. Their first meetings were polite, almost chilly. A nod in a hallway, a handshake that ended too quickly. They shared sets on big pictures, San Francisco, Test Pilot, Boomtown, Hits the Sounds. That proved the studio power and their combined pull. On camera, they worked like pros. Off-camera, the distance remained. People noticed the way Gable stiffened when praise for Tracy's truth floated around the soundstage. They noticed Tracy's guarded eyes when reporters called Gable the King. Awards made the line sharper. Tracy took home back-to-back Oscars. Gable, the people's champion, owned the marquee and the fan mail. It became a quiet contest. Craft versus charisma, medals versus thunder. Friends said Gable felt that Tracy looked down on star power. Others said Tracy disliked the circus around Gable's image. No shouting, no scenes, just steel under velvet. One story followed them. At a private screening, someone praised Tracy's restraint and joked that some men posed for the camera. The room laughed. Gable did not. Whether the remark was meant for him or not, the sting stayed. From then on, every comparison felt personal. The studio machine kept them side by side. Pride kept them miles apart. And the storm inside Gable began to gather. It would not pass. It would only grow darker with time. After the war, Gable returned to a town that had changed. The studio system was still powerful, but the cracks were visible. He came back to MGM a war hero, leaner, older in the eyes, and quieter in spirit. Adventure, 1945, trumpeted his return with a bold poster line, "Gable back and Garson got him." Audiences welcomed him, but the era was shifting. He made thoughtful pictures like Homecoming and Command Decision, then chased heat with bigger canvases. Mogambo, 1953, took him back to the jungle of red dust, this time opposite Ava Gardner and Grace Kelly. It worked. The old magic flickered, warm and familiar. Free of MGM, he tried new partners, new stories, Soldier of Fortune, The Tall Men, Band of Angels, Run Silent, Run Deep. He could still command a room, still to live. A look that finished a scene, but youth was rising. Brando, Clift, Dean, and then Eastwood. The world wanted different heroes, broken on the inside, messy and modern. Gable adapted with grace. He chose roles that fit a man-of-weight leaders, captains, men who had known loss. Away from the set, his life slowed. He kept a ranch, rode in the early light, hunted, fished, and preferred small gatherings to grand parties. Crews remembered him for good manners. He knew names, shook hands, arrived ready. He did not chase television. He did not beg for headlines. He let the work speak. There were valleys, of course, openings that missed, stories that felt dated, weekends when the box office smiled only a little. But the fans stayed. They aged with him, brought their children, told them, "That's the king." And in 1960, he made one last gamble with the Misfits, a farewell of sweat, dust, and truth. It pushed his body hard, and history felt it. As the 1950s closed, Clark Gable seemed calm, yet he carried years of strain. He had married Kay Williams in 1955, and they chose quieter days. Early rides on the ranch, dinners, fewer bright rooms. He accepted fewer projects, traveling to Italy for it started in Naples, where his easy charm still played like music. On sets, he stayed the same, on time, prepared, respectful. Friends noticed the edges, longer days, more cigarettes, and a faraway look that came without warning. Fame had softened around him, but it still asked a price. Gable kept paying it, one step at a time. In 1960, he accepted the Misfits. Arthur Miller Harsh, beautiful story of broken hearts in the Nevada desert, directed by John Huston. The shoot was punishing. Wind, heat, dust, and days that ran past midnight. Gable insisted on doing his own roping and riding, chasing and wrestling half-wild horses under the sun. He lost weight, pushed through fatigue, and kept working without complaint. Crew members admired his grit, but they saw the cost. His face thinned, his breath shortened, and his eyes dimmed between takes. When the picture wrapped, the footage held truth. And the toll no one wanted to measure. 10 days later, he suffered a massive heart attack at home and was rushed to Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center. Kay, 8 months pregnant, stayed beside him, holding his hand and speaking softly about the child they would soon meet. On November 16, 1960, Clark Gable died at 59. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn, Glendale, beside Carol Lombard, the love he never stopped missing. In March 1961, his son, John Clark Gable, was born, a light after a long night. Fans mourned across the world. He left the screen, not their hearts. Whatever grudges remained, he kept them silent. Today, Clark Gable is remembered as the face of old Hollywood, strong, charming, and human. He made audiences believe in courage, romance, and quiet dignity. His films still glow, and his voice still carries across time. Friends said he respected many men, but never softened towards Spencer Tracy. That private chill became part of his legend, a shadow behind the crown. Yet the work outshines the wound. He showed that presence can be truth and that decency can be dramatic. Fans return to Rhett, to laughter, to grit, and find a man who never pretended to be more than himself. Clark Gable legacy is both light and shadow. On screen, he remains the symbol of classic Hollywood, strong, charming, and unforgettable. Yet behind the legend was a private rivalry with Spencer Tracy that never faded, a silent bitterness that shaped his story. Gable's presence was unmatched, his work ethic respected, and his loyalty fierce. He forgave few who doubted him, and that stubborn pride became part of his myth. Fans still feel his power in every role, sensing the real man behind the star. In the end, Gable legend endures, a king remembered for both his greatness and his unspoken grudges.